India has been highlighting Pakistan's concerns, issues and its dubious record in tackling terror for long now. Now, finally, the international community is taking cognizance. On Thursday, the Financial Task Force decided to put Pakistan on its grey list. But while the world is slowly recognizing the danger the Pakistan poses for global peace, it is all whether friend China is still demanding Islamabad's record in fighting terror. A day after Pakistan was put on the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force, China has backed Pakistan over its counter-terror efforts. In a press briefing, the spokesperson of the Chinese Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, Pakistan's efforts in the counter-terrorism has not only won recognition from China, but also from many countries around the world. We also believe that the people have made enormous efforts and sacrifice on counter-terrorism, and international community should fully recognize this. And I'm joined by journalist Gaurav Sharma from Beijing. Gaurav, are you surprised, or this is completely expected?
It's completely expected. You know, whenever there is a question in the Chinese Foreign Ministry about Pakistan's abysmal record on combating terrorism, there's always a reply or an answer which is on expected lines. China resolutely backs Pakistan when it comes to terror. And it says that you have to see that it's been doing wonderfully well. So that's a kind of a line which we all expect whenever we ask a question. To be very frank, when I asked a question to Lu Kang, that was quite expected, and it was actually on the same lines. And I think you have all the reasons to believe that why China backs Pakistan, because it has its own geostrategic and geopolitical reasons, because it has invested over $50 billion in the infrastructure program, in the infrastructure project, which is called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is the key artery of Beijing's ambitious Belt and Road project.
The mainstreaming of the terror in Pakistan continues. On your screen is a global terrorist, the mastermind of the horrific 26/11 attack in Mumbai, in which 166 people were killed. Hafiz Saeed remains the fountainhead of terror, yet the man the world wants behind bars is openly going about his business in Pakistan, right under the nose of the military, which claims it is fighting terror and which China has been defending. The Pakistani establishment is propping Saeed up as a political force. The global terrorist himself is not fighting next month's poll, but he's fielding candidates. He has launched the election campaign and has been inaugurating party offices. These are the visuals of Saeed inaugurating the election office of his political outfit, Milli Muslim League, in Islamabad. His son and son-in-law are among the 265 candidates fielded by MML for the elections. And I'm also joined by Amar Shaheen, senior journalist from Lahore, Pakistan. Mr. Shaheen, my question to you is that, is it really beneficial for the Pakistan's democracy for a person who is designated as a global terrorist, Mr. Shaheen, to be mainstreamed? Does it benefit Pakistan? Does it benefit Pakistani civil society? Or does it benefit Pakistani democratic institutions? So we'll try to go back to Mr. Shaheen. It's a bit of an audio problem with Mr. Shaheen, but the fact of the matter is that this is a cause of grave concern, because not because he's a designated terrorist, but the fact is that the records prove that he was involved in terrorist activities in 26/11 mastermind. But there is a larger ethical, larger moral problem which Pakistan is also dealing with. So, Mr. Shaheen, my question to you is, how does it benefit Pakistani democratic institutions or the democratic forces within Pakistan?
Well, the simple answer is that it doesn't benefit Pakistani democratic institutions or democracy in Pakistan. And perhaps that is the reason why such actions are being taken in the first place. Mainstreaming different ethnic groups is very welcome, but mainstreaming the people who are terrorists or great sympathizers of terrorists does not only delegitimize the democratic process in Pakistan, it also makes it impossible for real democratic forces to emerge in Pakistan, to emerge as powerful entities that do not get toppled over by the establishment, be it the military establishment or now the judicial establishment as well. So these are designs to weaken the democracy from within, And the most alarming part of all of this is that some of these hardline pro-terrorist political parties are not, it's not that they have no basis on the, it's not that they don't get any votes when they contest for elections. They get around 5,000-10,000 votes from a constituency which has around 100,000 votes or so, vaguely speaking. So this is a big concern for the people of Pakistan, where it's not just that they're being allowed to contest the elections, which is despicable. It's also they're garnering a lot of support, which is a very scary thing to think about.
But Mr. Shaheen, isn't it a big challenge for the modern, educated civil society of Pakistan, which is getting hemmed in by the conservative elements or the hardline elements on one side and the moneyed elements on the other side? Because it is this nascent middle class, I would say, which actually in most of the democracies define the way the policies are made.
I mean, this is the way it's always been. Just before the elections, even now, we have this Muttahida Majlis-e-Amal, which is a collection of religious political parties. And in the beginning, they criticized the military establishment, but we've always seen that as soon as they have any position of power, they are completely dictated by the military establishment and the powers that be. So it's very easy to control the elections when political parties that are religiously inclined, that do not have a vast majority of voters, when they are allowed or helped into getting into power, then alliances, the grand alliances that the establishment has been forming, we cannot say for this particular election that these, there is no evidence, but the evidence always comes later on, where because of the lack of any kind of punishment possible to the military dictators and heads and generals, they come themselves. The Asghar Khan case, they came out and they said, yes, we took money and we paid politicians and we created this grand alliance to beat the actual political parties of Pakistan. So, I mean, even this time, there are grand alliances being formed, and there are particular political parties who are being very openly supported by the establishment, and they're not even trying to hide it, because in Pakistan, the elections are of the electables mostly. So the electables are people who invest in elections and they know they're going to win. And they want to invest in a political party that is helped by the establishment. So the political parties are not trying to hide it, that they are being helped. Actually, they leak this information to the media and they want their impression to be like that. The establishment is behind them. So the electables join them, and people who want to be in power become turncoats.
Thank you, Mr. Shaheen, for joining us. And to give you a perspective on this issue of hardline candidates, terrorists joining the Pakistani mainstream political process. Now, America is fighting for answers after another gun violence, this time in a newspaper office. At least 5 people were killed and several others injured when a gunman attacked the newspaper office at Annapolis in Maryland. The suspect, identified as a 33-year-old man by the name Jared Ramos, has been apprehended. Reports say that he held a long-standing dispute with the Capital Gazette paper and had attacked the newspaper in court as well as on the social media. Almost a year ago, the paper had published an article about the suspect sending numerous emails to women in which he called her vulgar names and asked her to kill herself. Television footage showed people leaving the building, walking through the parking lot with their hands in the air. A reporter for the newspaper described the scene in the newsroom as being like a war zone, with staff hiding under their desks for safety. As a precaution, police has been deployed at offices of major media outlets in Baltimore and New York City. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is assisting local authorities in investigation. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump returned to Washington from Wisconsin after reports of newspaper shooting. Trump walked across the White House lawn without answering questions on the shooting. Earlier, the president had expressed condolence to the families of the victims.
Any words about the gathering of the president? Can you talk about the active shooters in Annapolis? Could you please talk to us about the dead reporters in Annapolis?
Mr. President, will you keep talking?
Do you have any words of condolence for the families, Mr. President?
Why are you walking away?
Why won't you come and talk to us about that?
Our investigative portion of this kind of breaks off into two different areas. One is the person of interest that we do have in custody. That person of interest is being interviewed as we speak by our Criminal Investigation Division. We do not believe, and we know through the investigation, that there are no further threats to the Capital Gazette newspaper.
Super. I mean, it's just super unfortunate to hear. Like, you never think it's going to be your own hometown, and then seeing, I was like a half mile down the street, so just seeing that it's that close, it's just kind of scary. Just watching the news and knowing you're in like walking distance.
Our correspondent Andy Roskin has more on the story.
Once again, after a mass shooting, Americans are asking the question, why? Here's what we do know. The suspect, a white male, apparently shot his way into the building that houses the Capital Gazette. That's the daily newspaper of the capital city of Maryland in Annapolis. And apparently, he started shooting, and authorities responded very quickly, within a minute or so. But by the time they did, there were several dead and injured as well. Of those killed, 4 of them were killed right there in the building. And authorities say it doesn't look like this suspect took a lot of care in figuring out how to plan out this shooting. They said it was very haphazard, without a lot of planning. In fact, they found him cowering underneath a desk in the newspaper, and that's very unusual, because usually mass murderers here in America either kill themselves or they are shot in a shootout with police. But in this case, police took the suspect into custody with no shots fired. We're told that he's being very uncooperative in police custody, so we don't know yet a motive for all this. Was he upset at the newspaper itself and the journalists, or possibly just someone inside the building? We don't know that yet. Also, authorities say they found some sort of incendiary device that the suspect had with him. That was neutralized. But in the meantime, there are lots of fears in newspapers around the country and news outlets over this. Again, without knowing exactly the reason why he did this, several newspapers, large newspapers, have started beefing up security here in America. But this newspaper, the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland, is more of a smaller newspaper, not really a large outlet. So there's a lot of grieving there going on. And until we learn more from the suspect about why he might have done this, or till we hear from his friends or associates or family members about why he might have done this, we just don't know. And we'll certainly have more information for you as we learn it. Andy Roaston reporting in Chicago for WION.
Is India finally preparing to bow to U.S. demand and cut oil supplies from Iran? India's oil ministry is reported to have asked refineries to prepare for a drastic reduction in Iranian imports. India's oil minister Dharmendra Pradhan indicated as much when he told reporters that the country's policy with regard to Iran would be dictated by national interest. He said, and I quote, "We know to have a healthy energy mix, we can get oil from anywhere. The rest depends on geopolitics, and those decisions will be taken based on the situation. We will go by our interest. When we decide anything on Iran, we will inform you."
That China, India and Pakistan, they have some kind of.
The statement comes against the backdrop of the rising U.S. pressure on both India and China to comply with its sanctions and regime on Tehran. That during Barack Obama presidency, New Delhi had won a waiver from sanctions for oil imports from Iran, but had to cut trade in other items from the country. The Trump administration, on the other hand, has been unrelenting. On Thursday, visiting American envoy to UN, Nikki Haley repeated the American position on Iran in Delhi. Haley's comments came a day after she met Prime Minister Narendra Modi, seeking to boost bilateral ties. The two sides are already engaged in difficult talks on trade and tariffs. The 2+2 dialogue stands postponed despite assurances from both sides that all's well. India is the largest buyer of Iranian oil after China. Iran is in fact India's third biggest oil supplier after Iraq and Saudi Arabia. New Delhi can make up for the disruptions with supplies from Iraq, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, but the oil bill will surely be up. Iran has been offering India discounts on insurance and freight, which the other countries are unlikely to offer. Any decision to curtail supplies would also impact a careful rebalancing of ties with Tehran that New Delhi has been attempting under Modi government. Earlier this year, India and Iran had rebooted ties during a visit by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. He was the first Iranian president to visit India in a decade. The two sides had signed over a dozen pacts, including one on long-term strategic partnership on energy security after talks between President Rouhani and Prime Minister Modi in Delhi. New Delhi has cultivated ties with Iran on a track parallel to the United States of America, Israel and other West Asian countries. India sees Iran as a strategic ally as it counters Pakistan's larger destabilizing influence in the region. New Delhi has been helping Iran develop Chabahar port that gives it access to Afghanistan by passing Pakistan. Earlier this year, the Trump administration decided to unilaterally withdraw from 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers. The sanction regime followed. India had been hopeful it will find a way to bypass the sanctions again, but the US has been insistent that New Delhi also has to cut supplies from Iran in line with the decision. As per US law, the wind down period for sanctions to take effect ends on the 4th of November. The US says the sanction law will apply on all countries including India and China after the date. India is assessing its position since many Indian companies have exposure to the US financial system and may thus be severely impacted. China, on the other hand, is the largest buyer of Iranian crude, is yet to make this position clear, given that it is already engaged in a multi-billion-dollar tariff war with the Trump administration. In Thailand, heavy rains continue to hamper search and rescue operations for a school football team that's been trapped in a flood cave for past 6 days. Water is being pumped out of the flooded cave complex to try and reach the boys. The team of 12 boys aged 11 to 16 went missing on June 23rd and are believed to be trapped in the Lung Cave complex in northern Thailand. The boys, along with the 25-year-old coach, went missing after they decided to explore the cave despite signs outside that warned of flooding in the passage chambers, although plans to drill into the mountainside overnight and drain water from inside the cave were partially successful. The complexity of the cave and the constant heavy rains are making it difficult for the 1,000+ rescuers involved in the search and rescue.
ตอนนี้เป็นเรื่องของฝนนะครับเพราะฝนตกถ้าฝนตกเนี่ยเจ้าที่เราทำงานไม่ได้1ปริมาณน้ำมันสูงขึ้นน้ำในถ้ำก็จะสูงขึ้นด้วยนะครับก็ความขีดจำกัดของในการช่วยเหลือก็จะลดน้อยลงเพราะว่าน้ำขึ้นสูง2ในการเดินตรวจสอบในด้านบนภูเขาก็จะมีปริมาณน้ำฝนมากในชุดของเดินเท้าก็จะมีอุปสรรคเรื่องการฝนตกครับช่วงนี้ในการแก้ไขนะครับก็มีทำได้อย่างเดียวครับคือในการติดตั้งเครื่องสูบน้ำนะครับเพิ่มเครื่องสูบน้ำเพื่อดูดน้ำในถ้ำนะให้ลดน้อยลงนะครับนะฮะ
The search has so far yielded no other trace of the boys other than the initial bicycles and soccer shoes found near the cave entrance and handprint inside the cave. Yesterday, British divers joined the elite Royal Navy unit to further aid in search and rescue, although the golden rescue window of 72 hours has been missed. Rescuers are hopeful of a miracle as the boys can drink water from the cave. Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha visited the site to offer comfort and hoped that the boys are alive. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha visited the site and offered encouragement to the rescuers and comfort to relatives.
นายกมาทำงานนายกมาให้กำลังใจเขาแล้วเท่าที่ดูก็ทุกอย่างก็เป็นระบบระเบียบเรียบร้อยสิ่งสำคัญก็คือว่าขวัญและกำลังใจของทุกคนยังดีอยู่ก็จะมีครอบครัวบ้างนะครับเมื่อกี้ผมก็บอกแนะนำให้มีการทำสมาธินะ
The Indonesian tourist island of Bali closed its international airport today for a few hours, stranding thousands of travelers as the Mount Agung volcano gushed a 2,500-meter column of ash and smoke. However, the airport was reopened after a few hours. The National Disaster Mitigation Agency said that nearly 450 flights were cancelled, affecting 75,000 people. The volcano began gushing smoke on Thursday. Its alert level has not been raised and an exclusion zone around the crater remains at 4 kilometers. The Regional Volcanic Ash Advisory Center said winds could carry the southwest towards Java, Indonesia and most densely populated island Agung, about 70 kilometers northeast of Bali's tourist hotspot of Kuta, last had a major eruption in 1963, killing about 1,100 people. It had a dramatic increase in activity last year, forcing the evacuation of tens of thousands of people, but had quietened by early this year. Authorities lowered its alert status from highest levels in Feb. You've heard of rooftop kitchen gardens and restaurants, and this time someone came up with an idea of a rooftop vineyard, and that too bang in the middle of concrete in New York. He claims it is the world's first commercial rooftop winery. Take a look.
Cheers. Cheers. You can enjoy this view of the Empire State Building while sipping wine, sitting in a vineyard in the heart of New York City. It may sound unbelievable, but Rooftop Red is a startup vineyard built on the top of a 4-story former Navy building in Brooklyn. Its founder, Devin Schumacher, calls it an urban oasis.
We're the warmest vineyard site in New York State. So we're able to actually develop these red varietals to a higher degree than any other vineyard established in the state. So we had higher bricks readings, higher growing degree days, which is heat accumulation throughout your growing season. So all these, urban attributes are actually contributing to, a more developed, more concentrated Bordeaux red varietal wine.
Schumacher's 15,000 square foot rooftop grows grapes that will only produce their first barrel of wine by 2019. Till then, Rooftop Reds is offering wines made from its grapes grown in upstate New York, as well as reserves from other labels. But when its first batch of signature red blend, about 300 bottles, comes out next year, the vintage may be beyond the means of New Yorkers on a budget. Schumacher says he's planning on selling them for $1,000 a bottle, as he thinks the exclusivity demands that price. For now, guests come up to the space to relax in hammocks, picnic tables and lounge chairs while sampling wines from the Finger Lakes region and enjoying the view, along with events like movie nights and yoga sessions.
I think it's a really awesome spot to just hang out with friends. It's just really low-key. It's a different spot, especially in Brooklyn. That's always about like hustle and bustle. You could just, I don't know, the vibes is very relaxed, which I really like.
What certainly works for the venture is that it offers New Yorkers the backyard they don't have and de-snobifies the wine industry. Bureau Report, WION.